So I've been watching way too many homelab videos lately, and you know what keeps popping up? Creators telling me to build my own Jellyfin server and to stop using services like Netflix and Disney+. It's easy, it's cheap, it's fast, or so they say. I've been paying at least $50 a month for subscriptions for my daughter to watch her favorite TV shows and movies, and it's starting to add up. Sure, I've built servers in the past before, but they're just NASes, just boxes that hold lots of data. It's straightforward and safe. You install a NAS operating system and then follow a guide, then boom, all your data now exists on a server. But recently, my eyes were open to all the other things a server can do, like play movies, music, and even host photos. So I built a decent Ubuntu desktop that could do all that for about $50 by using an old Dell Optiplex we got off eBay. And that got me thinking, what if I wanted something even smaller and sleeker for my living room? But instead of choosing the simple route of installing a Linux desktop with a pretty GUI, I opted for the hard way. So is it as easy as they say? After going through this, will I also be one of those creators that say, building a server is cheap and fast, anybody can do it? Or is that just a lie they tell you to get you trapped into the home lab rabbit hole? Well, to find out, I have to go and get myself a sleek little machine that's also cheap. And what better way to do that than to buy used? Especially since Windows 10 stopped getting security updates, there's been a mass exodus of PCs on the used marketplace. And surprisingly, those PCs aren't bad at all. In fact, they're perfect for something like a server, or so my friends say. As soon as I got this idea to build a home server, I called one of my home lab buddies, Colton from Hardware Haven. Now, I'm no master of hardware, and there were too many questions that I had. What computer do I buy? How much RAM do I need? What about the CPU? What do I get? And after an hour-long conversation, he recommended this category of PCs called Tiny Mini Micros. If you don't know what that means, they're different names for the same thing, which are ultra-compact computers designed for places like hospitals and dentist office. Lenovo Tinies, HP Minis, and Dell Micros. He also mentioned something else, that if I seriously wanted to play back smooth 4K video, I would need to look at 6th generation Intel chips and after. Now, being the PC noob I was, I nodded and said, yep, I'll figure it out later, I thought. So off to eBay, I found a decent PC that was cheap-ish. A Dell Optiplex 9020 Micro for $89. I patted myself on the back. Well done, you did it. It's even got an SSD inside it, unlike a lot of the other listings. And so I pressed buy now and proceeded to wait until it arrived. And when it did, it looked pretty good, way smaller than I expected. And it even had a Wi-Fi antenna. Did I just hit the jackpot? All the stickers on it were torn off and erased, which made me think it came from a dentist's office. Now was the moment of truth. Did I spend $89 on a working computer, or did I get scammed? It even has remnants of stickers from a previous life and random other ones like this. 6807. Holy, this thing was manufactured in 2015. That's over a decade ago. Honestly, it looks pretty modern. A display port, a VGA input, 4 USB ports, and an Ethernet port. Nice. It's even got 2 USB 3.0 super fast ports on the front and audio input and output too. So let's see if our $100 investment is gonna pay off. But I had a problem. This PC only has output for DisplayPort and VGA, not HDMI. So I hooked it up to a portable monitor and nothing happened. Then I tried my Samsung G9, which is an absurd idea now that I'm thinking about it, and obviously it didn't work. Next was a DisplayPort on a curved monitor we had laying around, already set up. Again, nothing. So now what? I exhausted the majority of the monitors in the office, and then it finally hit me. We have a cheapo $75 monitor laying around here somewhere with a VGA port, but no VGA cable. So I ordered one off Amazon and proceeded to wait another couple days patiently. Finally though, the day came for me to test my theory that this PC is so old that it can only output through VGA. Of course it's old. It's got a Windows 8 Pro sticker on it. I haven't seen that since 2015. So I plugged it in, pressed the button, and it worked. Finally, my server project can begin. After solving one problem, I ran into another. Which OS was I going to install on my home server computer? After some research, I stumbled upon Ubuntu. It's commonly used and it has long-term support while being stable too. And looking at the Ubuntu website, there are more versions than any other distro I've ever seen. It's seriously so corporate. So I did what any regular person would do. I contacted their salesperson to get a recommendation on which version to get. He affirmed my decision to use Ubuntu because it's free, and then proceeded to recommend Ubuntu Server with no GUI. That would mean that I would have to learn new skills like SSH and CLI. I think those are the things. He said there's documentation for troubleshooting, so nothing could go wrong, right? If you want your own NAS without going through the hassle of building one, then we've got you covered. Thanks to today's sponsor, Ugreen, and their NAS, the DH4300 Plus, the most beginner-friendly NAS you can buy. Instead of spending hours picking out your parts, routing cables, and going through all the troubleshooting just to get one set up, it's as easy as sliding in the hard drives, plugging in the Ethernet, tapping the NFC with your phone, and following the guided walkthrough. Everything's up and running in minutes, and it's so small it can fit onto any corner of your desk and just leave it there. Now you're able to access the NAS from any device that has access to your network. Once you're in, the all-in-one Ugreen app makes it easier than ever to share files, access them from multiple systems, including Windows, Mac, iOS, or Android, and even move directly to Google Drive for transferring through the cloud. Don't worry if you've never done this before or don't know what you're doing. Ugreen makes it extremely simple with its control panel and support guide. And once you get it all figured out, there's even an app center where you can download more advanced apps like Docker, Home Assistant, and Jellyfin. This compact box can scale all the way up to 120 terabytes. It's blazing fast with a built-in 2.5 gigabit Ethernet port. You can move a gigabyte-sized file in just a few seconds. And with its AI Smart Album, it can automatically identify and categorize people and places, making it way easier to sort through your images. All your data stays secure thanks to its real-time virus scanning and flexible permission controls. So if you've been thinking about your own home server setup but don't want the headache of building it, check out the Ugreen DH4300 Plus. Click the link in the description to get 15% off the Ugreen NAS today. I did the same process as any other Linux distro install I've done so far. Download the ISO and write it into the new boot drive. And unlike all my modern laptops, this little PC actually has USB-A ports, making it even easier. So I pressed install and let it go wild. After I followed instructions and pressed enter, and to my surprise, there were no bootable drives found. What? I just saw everything installed properly and now you're saying it's not there? So I did what any reasonable person would do and I installed it again. It's like pressing restart. It's gonna work, right? And surprisingly, it did. So my Ubuntu 24.04 Noble LTS headless server was alive. My creation lives. It's finally time to start hacking the mainframe by SSHing into the server. But first, I needed the IP address by typing hostname-i into the command line. It spit something out and boom, I typed in my password, I was in. That, shockingly, was the easy part. It wasn't until I got into the meat and potatoes of this server stuff that things take a turn. So I knew I had to install Docker. It's just like an app builder that pulls apps from the internet and lets me build them onto my little server. At least that's how I understand it. Correct me if I'm wrong. And so I read some documentation and sadly did not understand. So I opted for following a bunch of tutorials online, drinking massive amounts of coffee, and eventually got Docker running. I even did a test image called Hello World, which confirmed my Docker was doing everything it needed to. Talk to the Docker daemon, which is the brain of Docker. I pulled an image, I created a container, and I outputted it on my client. Yeehaw, we were doing things right. The next big decision is to figure out Plex or Jellyfin for my video hosting software. Plex is known for its user friendliness, but I also saw that Plex has a monthly subscription if you ever want to use it remotely, while Jellyfin is self-hosted. That means you own everything and it will never ever go into the cloud. So if I ever have an internet outage, my Jellyfin server should still work. Jellyfin it is. And like Docker, there's also loads of docs online on how to install it. So things are looking upward. They're moving along just nicely. That is until I tried opening up Jellyfin on my browser to see that it's not connected over and over again, even on Safari and on Chrome. It turns out my Jellyfin existed on my server, but it was invisible. It was in a little Docker container all by its lonesome. So I reinstalled it and it works. Reinstalling is just like magic. So now it was time to load up some movies and TV shows and just get things going. But how? My little PC doesn't have a disk drive and I only have real media in the office, like this full The Office collection in DVD form. I also picked up a full season 1 to 3 DVD Blu-ray set for my daughter, which I think she will be very excited for. So it was time to pull out my handy dandy Blu-ray player. Not a player, a disk drive. But before I had to do that, I had to download something called Make MKV, and it rips DVDs and Blu-rays into MKV files, like the name suggests. It's easy to use. You drop in your DVD, scan it, and then press go to start ripping. There were some road bumps here and there, like how some files just wouldn't read no matter how many times I wiped my disk clean. And they're completely new disks, so I don't understand why they wouldn't read. It took an entire workday to rip out all 6 disks, and each one took like an hour. So while I let them rip, I figured I would do something fun. Instead of being confined to only DVDs and Blu-rays, I wanted to open myself up to things on the public domain, like open licensed movies and media, stuff like those old Popeye videos or Felix the Cat. Ah, yes, endless entertainment for rainy days with no internet and no outdoor activities. So after some research and talking to various friends who have experience with this stuff, it involves downloading and using a Docker stack that involves a VPN, qubit torrent, and some other things that end in R. I'm not gonna go into details, but let's just say it involves some serious hacking with how much troubleshooting I had to go through to connect everything and get it working. But finally, after 3 hours, it worked. Thank goodness. And instead of ripping my DVDs of The Office, I figured I would torrent them instead to test my new stack and save me time and effort, which I think took me even more time because my torrenting stack barely knew how to talk to each other. Eventually, it did it. But was it worth it? I probably should have just ripped my discs instead. It's way more straightforward. You put this in, go boop, 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 done. But after that, things got a bit easier. I knew I also wanted to remote access using something called Tailscale, a VPN that lets me connect to the server from wherever I wanted to. That would let me watch Bluey from my house even if the server was still at the office. At this point, I was invincible. I was 90% of the way there, so close, and I knew it would be over soon. So I installed Tailscale. Now I've got 3 seasons of Bluey on my MacBook, but I still had to transfer it to my server. Luckily, I have experience with these things with my NASes. I had to set up SMB so I can just drag things into a folder and have it magically transferred to the server. And that's it. The moment I've been waiting for. To remote into my server, play my very own Bluey from my self-hosted streaming service. No more of that Disney Plus stuff. It's time. So there it was, Bluey playing on my phone without logging into Disney Plus or playing full-length episodes off YouTube. I even tried it at home and it worked. It's so cool and it was all mine. But was it worth it? It's taken me a full week's worth of troubleshooting as well as about $200 between the PC, the Blu-ray reader, and the 3-season DVD set of Bluey, and the quality is poop. I'm literally playing it back at 480p. Apparently, DVDs are 480p quality, max. Well, now I'm just disappointed. All that work for 480p resolution. What am I doing with my life? Sure, it's more cost effective than Disney Plus, but the 1080p and 4K versions only exist on Disney Plus. And if you think about it, what if it doesn't just work now that I've set it up? As a busy person with a business to run and a kid to raise, I wonder if it would have been easier and more worth it to keep on spending the monthly subscription fee. I would be getting access to not just Bluey, but also Disney movies and new releases, and in good quality too. Plus, I wouldn't be sitting in front of my laptop for endless hours punching things into the command line, crossing my fingers it would fix everything. But there was another part of me that knew that going back to paying a monthly fee for subscription services wouldn't be the right way to go. To never own anything, always paying a rental fee to watch something over and over again anyways. It reminds me of my Kindle, actually. I keep on buying these books, but I'm never gonna own them. I just own a digital license that they can take away from me whenever they want. So yeah, I do think it's worth it, especially if you're the kind of person who can get their hands a little dirty in the terminal. Besides, my daughter's a kid. What can she tell between 480p and 720 and 4K, right? It's all about control and ownership, to have something that can last beyond the end of next month. So maybe building your own server isn't for everybody, but it's way more empowering than you think. You actually get to make a decision now between, do I want to pay for someone else for access, or do I want to be able to own it and then share it with my friends and family? And if I was able to figure it out, I honestly think you could do it too. But there's another thought. What if I had just bought a DVD player? This would have literally solved everything. Just have a DVD player and DVDs. Who needs a server, right? I'm an idiot.